Hey everybody, it's Delta Shiny Zeta here, and welcome to another episode in the Every Illegal Action series. One series in particular that I have received a really large amount of comments to actually do this video for is MBT'S Progression Playoff series, which was inspired from CMO's Progression series. Now, I actually kept going back and forth between, if I should do it or not, mainly because this series is edited very differently compared to CMO's Progression series. There's a lot of things that actually happen in duels in which MBT actually ends up cutting. For example, some kind of damage calculation might be wrong, but then all of a sudden a random cut happens and then there's like 5 things in a row over here that just ended up fixing everything. Which makes sense, or else these videos would be dragged out. Because this series is different from CMO's in that it's not 2 players, it's actually 5 different players. Leah, Gavin, Brent, Danny, and MBT himself. So there's 5 of them, and they do kind of like a little mini tournament in every single video. I will say that MBT actually left a comment in the Every Illegal Action History of Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, episodes 1 through 25, where he highly suggested to me to not do a video on this particular series because of these aforementioned reasons. But you know what? I'm stubborn as hell, so I'm gonna go ahead and do it because it's gonna be fun. In general, this series does have a lot less illegal actions because there's actually 5 of them in there. And they're constantly checking a lot, and just seeing things like, hey, you missed this, you missed that. The other reason is that they also have another individual in the call sometimes, who they call Siberian, who actually is also really great at rulings. A lot of rulings knowledge and actually clarifies a lot of things, which is why in general there's a lot less. In this video, I'm going to be covering all of the original Duel Monsters era, the GX era, and the 5D's era. In total, there's approximately 42 videos. That's the 39 regular ones plus the actual live ones for DM, GX, and 5D's, for a total of 42 episodes. Alright, I've dragged this out long enough, let's go ahead and start. So we are beginning with episode 2, which is actually Metal Raiders in the Progression Playoffs. There were no illegal actions in episode 1. In episode 2, there was something very minor. Again, like I said, there's going to be a lot of damage calculation things that they usually fix, and I have to constantly look over here to see if in a future cut in that same duel, MBT did in fact cut into it and they fixed it. In most cases, they do end up fixing it, but in very rare cases, they actually don't. So here's the first one. Crass Clown being summoned here, and ends up attacking Starboy. Starboy here is at 1050 attack because of his own boost, while Crass Clown stays at 1350. So if we go ahead and see here, Crass Clown attacks into Starboy, that's a 300 life point difference. And if we take a look on the right side, if we move forward for the entirety of the duel, we actually never see Danny take that 300 damage. So right here, for example, he should be at 4700. If we go all the way to the very end of the duel though, the big question I always do in this particular series with illegal actions is, did it matter? The correct answer is it did not matter. By this point, he should actually be at 3700 life points, not 4000, but as we can see, that would not have changed the outcome of the duel at all, so no, this one did not matter. Moving on to episode number 3, which is the Spell Ruler episode. This is actually the beginning of multiple illegal Cyberjar resolves. I say this because Cyberjar is a very tricky card. Just know that with Cyberjar, there's a couple things you need to know. The first thing is that both players must reveal the 5 cards before any player even puts anything on the field, any monster on the field. The second thing is that the turn player always special summon first. So we take a look at this case at around the 10-30 mark or so in the Spell Ruler episode. Whiptail Crow goes ahead and attacks. And then we go ahead and see that Cyberjar gets flipped, which means it's going to resolve, so everything gets blown up. Then we actually see, so we see 5 cards here being, revealed, and then they start special summoning. As we can see by moving a little forward right here, there we go. So this is why it's sometimes a little weird with this, but just know that sometimes it can alter the outcome of the decisions that you make based on the cards that are revealed. So for example, because MBT has not revealed his 5 cards, there's a chance, sometimes a chance, that in this case Leah could go ahead and change her decision to place a monster. Now in this case it's a Man-Eater Bug. Would she have put a Man-Eater Bug face up attack position if MBT revealed? It's obviously a no, right? Which is why I'm going to say this didn't really matter. But the other thing too that ended up being different, like I said, is the turn player. MBT's the turn player. He attacked the Cyberjar, which means he has to special summon first, not Leah. In this particular case, I'm going to say it didn't matter, because if we take a look at MBT's 3 cards, he has a Mahavilo and 2 Spirit of the Harp. He places both Spirit of the Harps in defense mode and Mahavilo in attack mode. In that same duel, however, around the 12-10 mark or so around here, Jiraigumo ends up attacking a face-down Arm Ninja. Arm Ninja's effect says flip, target 1 spell card on the field, destroy that target. If the target is set, reveal it and destroy it if it is a spell card, otherwise return it to its original position. So, the thing you have to understand from this effect is that Arm Ninja actually is mandatory. So if there's at least 1 spell or trap on the field, you have to target it, even if it's your own. So if we take a look at the field, there's only 1 card right here, and we do know it's a polymerization, which means that at this point, polymerization should have been popped by the Arm Ninja because it's mandatory. The polymerization does end up getting activated, just moving a little bit more forward. There we go. And it brings us a Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon. At this point, I thought, oh gosh, it's really gonna matter, right? Actually, no, because if we move forward a little bit more, we will see that MBT actually still ends up losing. And that illegal action ended up helping MBT by giving him an extra card that should not have been there, but he still lost the duel. So that means we can say it didn't actually matter. Moving to about the 22:30 mark or so, we have another illegal Cyber Jar resolving. So right here, Danny ends up attacking with Jiraigumo into the Cyber Jar, so it's going to resolve after he flips the coin, whatever. I think he got it wrong, whatever. Okay, and then we move forward, and we'll actually see that, once again, the non-turn player went ahead and revealed their cards first, and then proceeded to special summon the monsters, which in this case, we have a Magician of Faith and a Giant Rat, oh, and a Jiraigumo as well. So we have that one, 2 face down, and then we have a Jiraigumo. So we see a 7-colored fish, a Castle of Dark Illusions, and a Giant Soldier of Stone that they get placed in that way. One other thing I didn't mention is that Cyber Jar has another part of its effect too, but this one actually isn't illegal if they don't do it. But Cyber Jar also allows the player to shuffle their face down defense position monsters that were special summoned by its effect. Meaning in this case, Danny and Brent can each go ahead and shuffle their 2 monsters so the opponent doesn't know what card is what. Now, I'm not going to count this specific thing as illegal because, again, this part is optional. The player can shuffle them. It's not mandatory, so it's not illegal. Overall, because of the monsters revealed, the 3 on each side, I can say that it more than likely did not matter because the positions would not have been changed anyway if they resolve Cyber Jar in the correct order, like the correct order of its effects, so I think it's all good. I will really quickly show you a correct resolving of Cyber Jar, because in here they actually did do it right. Here the UFO Turtle goes ahead and attacks the Cyber Jar, it goes ahead and goes off, and then 5 cards are revealed, and then 5 cards are revealed. Look at that. All cards are revealed before any monster is special summoned, and then the turn player special summons their monsters first. But one thing that was actually illegal here is that the 7-colored fish, Leah actually went ahead and put them in face-up defense position, and if we take a look at the entire duel, they stayed in face-up defense position the entire time. They should be in face-down defense, just like these over here, but I'm not sure why that happened, but that totally happened. Did it matter? More than likely not, I'm gonna say, because by this point the opponent, in this case Gavin, should know the identity of these cards, even if they were face down and even if they were shuffled, because it's literally the same card, so it doesn't matter. I'm gonna say it doesn't matter. However, in that same duel, around the 33 mark or so, we do have the one final Cyber Jar. I know all of you are bored of Cyber Jar by this point. Just one more Cyber Jar, trust me. This one, however, mattered even less, because by this point, the duel is going to be over since Leah is about to be decked out since she has 5 cards left. I'm only putting this here because technically it was illegal in the order of the whole revealing thing, but whatever. It doesn't matter because the duel would have ended anyway, so that's it. Moving on. Moving on to episode 5 in the Labyrinth of Nightmares set, around the 24-20 mark or so. There's a Kaiku on the field here that Brent actually has, and then we go ahead and see that MBT special summons a Garuda the Wind Spirit by banishing a wind monster from the graveyard, which would be legal in normal circumstances, but there's Kaiku. Kaiku does not allow the opponent to banish monsters from their graveyard. This is one of the few cases in which MBT actually did catch this during editing, and he was basically urging everybody to get over themselves, including me, so I probably shouldn't be mentioning this, but I'm still mentioning it because that's the point of this video. Anyway, did it matter? Well, we're gonna go ahead and move forward. We will see that it definitely changed, certain things like this Kaiku, during the amp phase, the effect ended up changing it, which actually let MBT attack over it. So it had some, impact in the duel overall. But if we go all the way forward, we'll actually see that he ends up losing still because he ran out of cards. He ended up decking out. So I don't think it would have mattered, to be honest. Moving on to episode number 11, Ancient Sanctuary, we have one illegal action, and this is actually one of the biggest illegal actions in the entire series that definitely did affect the outcome of a duel. We move on into Brent's turn, which is red. As you can see, he actually ends up drawing for turn. He draws an extra card, so it's Brent's turn. Wall of Revealing Light gets activated. He spends 3,000 life points to go down to 300. Why? Because he wants his life points to be lower in that way, so he can activate the last turn card. Alright, so I'm actually going to play it from here just so you can see the context.
If you got it, you got it.
Oh my god. Oh my god, wait! Do you have Joust?
Ah! So can I take this?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Brent, how does this interaction work?
They ended up cutting here by this point because they actually ended up messing an interaction regarding with how many cards are on the field or whatever like that, which that part was fine. But one part that everybody completely forgot is that this last turn is an illegal activation. Why? Because there's two conditions in order to activate last turn. The first is your life points must be lower than 1,000, which that's correct. The second, literally on the first sentence, says this card can only be activated during your opponent's turn when your life points are 1,000 or less. Keep in mind, this is Brent's turn. He activated Wall of Revealing Light to go down to 300 life points. And then full bloom, Leah ended up activating Secret Barrel. By this point on, Brent is not allowed to chain last turn because it's currently his turn, not the opponent's turn, which means he would die to Secret Barrel. That's game. Leah was the rightful winner of this game, even though if we move forward, they end up treating it as Leah lost, when that's actually not the case. She should have won. It definitely 100% mattered because Leah was the winner, not Brent. Moving on to episode number 14, Flaming Eternity. There's one illegal action here. By this point, Leah goes ahead and summons a Masked Dragon, and then activates Stamping Destruction, pops a card, but the other effect of Stamping Destruction is that it also deals 500 damage to the opponent. In this case, we do not see the damage, but it didn't matter. This one didn't matter because literally that same turn a little bit later, Phoenix Wing Windblast gets activated to spin that card, and that's basically enough damage for game. So that's it. Moving to the DM finale, which is actually live that they're doing it, like a live stream. Kaiku ends up attacking into a 2,000 defense monster. By this point, Danny should be taking 200 damage, but he never takes it. Even though usually in these live stream episodes, they're a lot better at this because the chat backs them up. For example, there's people saying, take 200, take 200. And if we move forward, never happened. Eventually, Danny admitted defeat, and Brent won the duel anyway. That 200 life point would not have mattered. So nope, didn't matter. In the same episode, around the 1:15:10 mark or so, we actually see something kind of weird. To be honest, I'm just going to play it from here, so let's see if you can catch it.
Had a lot of just general cards to stall. And so that felt like an easy way to win a game where I don't have to try and overpower you guys with suboptimal.
Alright, not sure if any of you caught that, but there was an unnecessary discard there. In fact, it's actually illegal to discard cards when you're not over the limit. I think it's because MBT thought he was over the hand size at 7+, but he was actually only at 6. We actually do see somebody point this out in the chat, I believe. I remember seeing that right here. Discard for hand size with 6 in hand, question mark. In the end, he ended up losing the duel, and it kind of wasn't close by this point, mainly because of Kaiser Colosseum. I don't think that extra card in the hand would have actually helped MBT, so I don't actually think that ended up mattering. And finally, around the 1:43 mark or so, we end up seeing Danny take a turn here. Should be taking 1,000 from Lava Golem, so keep this in mind that he should be at 100 right here. And he ends up setting a card. Now, everyone else also kind of caught this because by this point the duel was kind of weird. But he can't set this card, so we have to assume that, you know, this is not going to be there, obviously, because he can't do it. It's literally illegal since he should be at 100. He takes the 1,000 from Lava Golem there again, so that's not possible to set that because of Chain Energy being on the field. Ends up attacking Spirit Cretin. Not a whole lot he can do about that, unfortunately, so Gavin ends up winning the duel. It didn't matter, I just wanted to show that that was an illegal set. Shouldn't be there, but it did not matter at all. Moving into the GX series, the very first one is in the Lost Millennium, episode number 15, around the 1540 mark or so. Millennium Scorpion ends up attacking this DD Survivor, which is 2000 versus 1800, and it should actually be 200 damage, but MBT takes 700 instead. I guess thinking that it already had the bonus, but it doesn't get the bonus until after it destroys the card. So it should be 200, so he took an extra 500 damage here. It didn't matter at all because if we take a look at the damage right here, yep, not even close, right? 8,000 to 700 should be at 1,200, but it wouldn't have mattered at all. Moving on to episode number 16, Cybernetic Revolution. At around the 2640 mark or so, we'll see an attack going on here. Jerry Beans Man ends up attacking into a Steamroid. Now the Steamroid only changes its stats to its attack whenever it attacks or is attacked, but its defense stays the same at 1800, which means by this point, Jerry Beans Man ended up taking 50 deflected damage back. So it should be fine as 50 damage, and he never takes it. It didn't matter, because right here we see that opponent admitted defeat should be at 7950. Obviously, the 50 damage did not matter. Okay, in the next episode, around the 2040 or 2030 mark or so, somewhere around there, we actually see that Leah goes ahead and activates Malfunction in response to Conscription. So, let me actually play you the clip.
Oh! You're not playing Malfunction! You're not playing Malfunction! Leah!
So since it was technically changed back to its original position, does that mean it's set?
It's been set this turn and you can't activate it, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alright, so Malfunction is one of those cards that's, you look at it and you think it's like a 1 out of 10 in terms of how good it is, but it's actually a 0 out of 10 because it's even worse than it already is. Basically, the card does not reset a trap card back, which is so stupid, but it just returns it to its original position. Now, technically what they did here is not illegal, because it's not illegal to not activate Malfunction that same turn. But it's more so a clarification. They eventually found out about this in the next episode, I believe, due to a couple comments that actually clarified that as well. But yes, this card is different than cards like, let's say, Scrap Iron Scarecrow, because a card like that sets the card back down, whereas Malfunction does not. So yes, you can activate a trap card again that same turn that has been Malfunction. The only purpose ever of this card is to make the opponent pay a cost again. That's literally all I can think of. Other than that though, it's completely useless. And around the 4640 mark of this same episode, Steamroid gets destroyed, and then we actually see Chthonian Blast get activated, which destroys a monster, and then both players take damage equal to half that monster's attack, which in this case would be 1050. If we go ahead and look at this, MBT took 1150, Gavin took 1050, so MBT took an extra 100 damage here. Did it matter? No, it did not matter, because this right here, it means that he should be at 1200, but it still wouldn't have actually done anything because he would have lost. Okay, Enemy of Justice is up next. This is episode number 19. Around the 1910 mark or so, we see the first one here. Right here we have Cybernetic Magician goes ahead and attacks Familiar Possessed, and this difference of damage is actually 550. However, Leah takes 650. That's an extra 100 damage. So that's an incorrect calculation. At the end of the duel, we can see right here that Leah should be at 5050 instead of 4950, but it clearly did not matter. Usually these little life point calculations don't end up mattering most of the time, so it's fine. Around the 2745 mark, here we can see that Elemental Hero Wild Wingman ends up targeting this card and ends up destroying it, but Macrocosmos is on the field, which means that any card that is sent to the graveyard actually is banished instead. They were actually pretty good about this in this duel. As you can see, they keep sending cards into the banish zones, but not this one. That was the only one that should have been there. That's illegal, but it obviously 100% did not matter. Okay, around the 38 mark or so, I noticed an illegal action here from Danny, and I wasn't actually able to see any comments about this. I could be wrong. I might be missing something on a cut here, but I looked at this very carefully. So right here, Chainsaw Insect goes ahead and attacks Danny. So he takes 24 and he draws a card because of the effect from Chainsaw Insect, but he also activates Damage Condenser. So Damage Condenser requires you to discard a card and then you special summon a monster equal to or lower than the damage you took, in this case 2400. So what does he do? He goes ahead and, if we take a look, He summons this monster, which is 2400 attack, but look at his hand, it's still at 4. The next turn, he draws for turn. But that means he should be at 3, and there was no other card in the graveyard. That's what's really weird. So in this case, Danny should have discarded a card and then summon this and then take his turn. I think he just completely forgot to discard a card, never did it, and nobody ever caught that. I'm pretty sure that's what happened. Unfortunately, if we go to the end of the duel, we can see that Brent ended up admitting defeat, so Danny ended up being the winner. It's impossible to say if that illegal action mattered because we don't know what card he would have drawn, and by that point on, every turn from that point on until the end of the duel, which was basically about 6+ minutes of that since the illegal action, would have been different. Would it have mattered? Possibly, but we don't know. We honestly don't know, but this is one that you can't just say, oh, it didn't matter at all. Maybe it did. I don't know. Moving on to episode number 22. This is a Strike of Neos, actually. So in this particular episode, around the 1320 mark or so, Karmika gets activated, card sent to the graveyard as a cost, and then Snipe Hunter gets targeted, and it gets sent to the graveyard. Karmika is a card that they actually resolve correctly almost every single time. This is probably the only time that I saw where they did it illegally. They kept the Snipe Hunter in the graveyard, and they never actually put it in the bandage zone after that. The other thing too is that around the 15-15 mark in that same duel, Iru goes ahead and attacks Sparkman, which should be 100 damage, but MBT never takes it. So that's 100 extra damage he should be taking. He took the one for Chthonian Blast, both of them, but not the 100 damage. If we go forward to the duel though, I don't think either of these mattered. He has graveyard revival cards like Oversoul, but that's only for E-Heroes, so the Snipe Hunter in the graveyard wouldn't have mattered, since there's no effective way to actually bring it back. The other thing too is that the 100 damage you should have taken also seems like it didn't really matter, because again he should be at 3750 by this point. Okay, so in Gladiator's Assault around the 4435 mark or so, we have Ultimate Tyranno attacking into this Neos alias, which ends up doing some damage. That's 1100. And then by this point, they all believe that that's all that can be done in this battle phase, that other monsters, such as Spartacus in this case, are not able to attack. In their defense, this card is very poorly worded. It's so confusing and so stupidly worded that, honestly, I don't blame him for getting this wrong. But basically, what Ultimate Tyranno is saying that if it can attack, other monsters cannot attack. However, when Ultimate Tyranno finishes attacking all of his attacks because of its effect, it can no longer attack. And so other monsters are still able to attack. It just has to attack after Ultimate Tyranno finishes all of the attacks. Again, it's really weird and most people would not get that from reading this, but that's actually the official ruling of the card. Which means that in this case, Spartacus actually can attack and deal an additional 2200 damage back when it was in this part right here. Now, did it matter? No. Because if we move forward, we'll actually see that Gavin's still at a defeat anyway. He would have just lost one turn sooner. That's all that did. And technically, it's not illegal to not attack with Spartacus during that time. So technically, it's not an illegal action. But it was misinformation that they had, and that did affect one turn in the duel. Not that it mattered in the outcome. In the next episode, Light of Destruction, we actually see something here regarding the card Parry. Parry says, return a Gladiator Beast card from your hand to the deck, and negate the activation and effect of a trap card and destroy. So it's used in response to Limit Reverse. So here, we see that Danny ends up going ahead and putting a card into the deck, and then resolving the effect to negate it. This is one where I could be wrong because, again, of all the cutting that MBT and his editors also do, it's possible that there was a cut at some point in time, whether it was here or earlier, where the card was revealed to Gavin. But if it wasn't, that would be illegal because you do always have to reveal the cards when you have to do specific things from your hand or face down on the field or whatever. Reveal it to the opponent to ensure there's no cheating going on, and then you proceed to resolve the card. However, in the same duel, we do see a couple of damage calculation mistakes. So here, this card is actually at 2400 because there's currently 2 Battery Man on the field. So this one then ends up attacking Gladiator Beast Andal. That should be 500 damage right there. Keep that in mind. And we see that it ends up not being taken, that extra 500. Luckily it didn't matter because moving forward into the duel, we see that right here he should be at 6200, but it didn't matter because he still had a defeat since he couldn't win anymore. In the next duel, around the 2510 mark or so, that Bestiary ends up attacking this Battery Man D. It's really just to attack so that you can tag out. However, damage calculation is still applied. That should be 400 right there, and never took the damage right there, the 400 damage. So yeah, This damage wouldn't have mattered because MBT still ended up losing. It doesn't matter, he would have lost anyway. And then the last illegal calculation here is at around the 39 mark or so. Around here we can see the Bestiary once again attacks Battery Man D. Should be 400 damage taken as the deflect the damage, but never takes the damage. This time it's actually Leah, so here she should be at 4100 life points. Did it matter? Gavin animates defeat when Leah should have been at 3200 life points, not 36, so nope, would not have mattered anyway. And lastly, for the GX series, going into the live GX progression playoffs, we actually see a couple things here. So one of them is actually this card right here that ends up being discarded, should be banished actually because of Macrocosmos. So that's one that should have gone into the banish zone, but obviously it didn't matter since they can't really do anything with these spell cards in the graveyard. And then the other one is actually this one right here, Justy Break, which should also be banished because of Macrocosmos. Those were the only two that they missed. They actually did a really good job with pretty much everything else that was being banished because of Macrocosmos, but they did miss those two. Obviously, did not matter. Moving on. Moving into the 5D's era, starting with the very first one, the Duelist Genesis, around the 19 mark or so. Danny's taking his turn. He goes ahead and normal summons Mind Master. Then a really long turn happens. Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and go past that. But right here, he sets another card, which means that he normal summoned or set it twice in one turn, which obviously is illegal. These kind of situations are a little bit difficult to know if they actually ended up mattering, especially when they happen really early in the duel. Because by that point, it's impossible to know, like, oh, what about in this turn or that turn or that turn, if you know what would have happened with having one less monster. It's a little hard to know, but if we move forward, one thing that they were not aware of by the card known as Battle Tuned in this duel is that the attack boost is actually permanent. This card ended up getting Battle Tuned earlier in the duel, and if we take a look at what it does specifically, is it grants a permanent attack boost. In this case, it should be plus 12 because Crabons was banished. That's right here. So this thing is actually at 3700 by this point. Stardust Dragon crashes into the Cold Enchanter. Now, obviously, we know that if they had played this correctly and both players knew, he would not have rammed his Stardust Dragon into Cold Enchanter, right? Obviously. Because that would have been a stupid move. He wouldn't have done it. So in this case, it would have stayed on the field, but Cold Enchanter would have been more powerful than Stardust Dragon. So, you know, definitely a couple important points there. Luckily, in the end, Danny is the one that admitted defeat. If MBT would have lost this duel, these illegal actions would have definitely ended up mattering in some way, shape, or form, but they didn't, so that's good. Moving on to Crossroads of Chaos, we end up seeing a couple things. First of all, it's pretty confusing with all this World Tree, Blackguard, and Cactus Fighter bullshit that's happening everywhere. I had to replay this so many times. At one point, I was like, wait a minute, they ended up taking damage, but they ended up taking it back or something eventually, which they fixed something. They're like, for example, I think here, Leah ended up taking 50, but then it should have actually been 150. I think eventually she ended up taking an extra 100 later on. But the one that was actually incorrect was the 650 that she ended up taking, which is right here. I say this because Cactus Fighter summons a token in defense position to the opponent's side of the field. But there's a Black Garden, so it's actually at 250, but it's in defense mode, so that we're treating it as it was 250, but then taking the 650 from the other. Oh my gosh, I can't even explain this. But the easiest way to explain is this token over here should have been in defense mode, which means that this damage that they ended up taking from this one battle should never have been applied. This should have been 0 damage instead of 650. Trust me on this, but you can rewatch this if you want to. It's confusing, and you can even see the board. It is a mess, but yeah, this is the one thing I did catch here. Now, taking an extra 650 here does actually put her just above 2000 damage. In the end, it wouldn't have mattered though because of these monsters that are here on the field. This one is actually halved, but still, regardless, it would be enough damage. Moving into the next one, we have Morphtronic Map here at around the 2028 mark or so. So what ended up happening here, and it's important to read Morphtronic map because you can't really get it from just reading that first sentence, but it says each time a monster's battle position is changed, place one morph counter on this card. It makes you think that it's per monster because it doesn't say each time a monster parenthesis s close parenthesis, you know? And then here they actually ended up treating it as 2. So here's 2 and then it goes up to 4 because of Book of Eclipse. Meaning one effect changed them both. However, the official ruling, and I'll read it, it says if multiple monsters have their battle positions change at the same time, only one morph counter is placed on this card. That makes the card even worse. Damn. But yeah, so it should have been only 3 right here, not 4. That gave Leah an extra counter, which was illegal. The main thing to know though is that overall I don't think it mattered, because I looked through all the turns and that like 300 stat bonus from the extra counter wasn't really mattering all that much, because her stats were still much higher than all of these low attack frogs and psychic monsters, that it wasn't really doing all that much, the extra damage. So I feel Leah would have still won this duel regardless. One other thing I need to clarify right now, because this is going to be coming up later regarding Flip-Flop Frog, is that it actually does not target. I'm going to play this clip here because there was some disagreements and stuff. Although it didn't do anything here in this particular duel, it does do something later on.
Punish me with double dupe frog.
I
here.
can't target.
Yeah,
target
even if you have
monsters.
flip-flop,
Oh, sorry,
you can't target.
You can. Flip-flop doesn't target.
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't.
I just look up flip-flop frog.
He looked it up, but nothing was really mentioned in this duel, but there is something later on. Keep that in mind. Okay, so in the Raging Battle episode, I'll just show this one, but I'm not going to count it as one because I want to clarify to all of you, I'm not including these little things like this. For example, and here MBT forgot to draw, activates Black Whirlwind, normal summons Bora, then he realizes he forgot to draw, so he draws the card, and it's like, oh, it's a Black Whirlwind. I would have activated it before I summoned that for a double Black Whirlwind search. Which, again, technically illegal, technically not, because he's supposed to do the draw anyway. If he didn't draw, it would have been an illegal not draw, because it's illegal to not draw. It's these weird situations. I'm not counting this. I'm not counting this, because this does seem legal to me, obviously, you know, since he was supposed to draw. And then, yes, he would have activated both before the summon. Okay, so around the 2909 mark here, this thing is halved at 1250 actually, but Miracle Locust gets activated, so it's up to 2250. But then Kalut ends up helping the Gale here, so it says 2700 versus 2250. So the difference here is actually 450, but MBT ends up taking 550 from this damage, so he took an extra 100. This one did not matter because he should be at 7850 and he ended up winning anyway, so yep, moving on. In the Ancient Prophecy video, around the 13-minute mark or so, around there, we see that Fairy Wind gets activated, destroys Teleport, but then both players take the damage, meaning 300 times the number of cards destroyed. So that's one. Gavin does end up taking it, but if we move forward, so in this one Danny should have taken 300, not that it mattered anyway, because by this point he pretty much gets OTK'd by this brain research lab bullshit that was happening a lot in these videos, so yeah. Next. In the Stardust Overdrive episode, around the 3340 mark, we end up seeing something here. I'm just gonna play this.
Alright, go. Okay, go.
Am I changing to defense position?
No, you're not changing to defense position.
Okay, so for this, it's important to look at Fane's effect, because we will actually see that this one attacked Krebon, so he took 800 to negate the attack, but then this one ended up attacking directly to do 500. It says this card can attack your opponent directly. If this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent by a direct attack, target one attack position monster your opponent controls, change it to defense position. Which means the effect is mandatory. And MBT said, no, you're not changing to defense position. So it's illegal to keep it in attack. You have to change to defense because the effect of Fane is mandatory. Ultimately, things like this don't really end up mattering, because what ends up happening is that the next turn, Brent could have actually just changed it back into attack, and it's perfectly fine. It does not really matter at all. However, we do see it here again in the next turn. Once again, Fane attacks for 500 and does not change it. So that's technically 2 illegal actions because it was the same one just twice. But again, these didn't matter. In the Absolute Power Force episode, around the 110:55 mark, the Widespread Dud gets activated here in response to the attack, and then we will see that Fairy Wind gets activated, which is Chainlink 2. And then...
Okay. In that case, I will... Changing Destiny.
And you'll see right here, even though they sent the cards earlier to the graveyard, MBT said he will Changing Destiny. That's important to know, because with this, Changing Destiny and Widespread Dud are both face up on the field when this card is going. So basically we resolve it backwards. Changing Destiny works first by, you know, changing the card to defense mode, and then Leah can choose to gain life points or inflict damage to the opponent. However, the other thing too is that all cards in a chain always stay on the field until the chain finishes up, unless a card were to change the location of the card to another position. For example, in this case, Change Your Destiny works, and then Bury Wind comes, and this card is still face up, because it's still the same chain. So it destroys both the Widespread Dud and the Changing Destiny, which means it's 2 cards. It should be 600 damage for each person, not 300 damage to each person. What's really interesting here is that later in that same duel, Oshalion goes ahead and attacks Leah for 14 when the others had already attacked, and she's down to 300. Now you see Fairwind here, but Leah for jokes activated Black Whirlwind, which means Fairwind can't be activated. But I'm just saying, by this point, Leah should have lost the duel because of that extra 300 damage that she should have taken. Even though she ended up losing that turn anyway, so it didn't matter at all, but that was just pretty funny. In the Shining Darkness episode around the 44:30 mark, we're going to see Master Gig here. I'm just going to go ahead and play this.
This for Master Gig.
Ooh.
You're banishing it because you're tributing it. Okay.
Fuck that.
Sure.
I'm going to declare priority and pop this face down.
Yep, that is...
The illegal action with Master Gig, and this is the official ruling, is that Master Gig cannot be activated if your opponent controls less monsters than the number of Psychic type monsters you control. The effect says you can pay 1,000 life points to destroy monsters your opponent controls equal to a number of face-up Psychic. It doesn't say up to the number of face-up Psychic type monsters. So, in a situation like this, it's actually illegal. Every other situation, they actually did it right with Master Gig. This is the only time it happened like that. To be honest, I don't think it mattered because there were many workarounds that Gavin actually had. From something as simple as getting rid of this extra Psychic monster by bringing Level Leader and doing things and going into... I was looking at it a lot in a lot of different perspectives, and it just doesn't seem like it mattered, so it's fine. Later that same episode, in the next duel, around the 49:10 mark or so, we see a set from Danny, and then we see Fishborg Blaster coming onto the field, which is illegal. Fishborg Blaster says if you control a face-up level 3 or lower water monster, you can discard 1 card, special summon this card from your graveyard. If this card is used as a Stinko, yeah, whatever, who cares about that part. The point is, you can only bring Fishborg Blaster from your graveyard if you control a face-up level 3 or lower water monster and you discard a card. So... we see the discard, but not the controlling face-up level 3 or lower. The other interesting thing about Flip-Flop Frog, remember the whole targeting, not targeting? Officially, the card does not target. That is the official ruling of Flip-Flop Frog. I'm going to actually play it from around here, the 50-30 mark.
I'm going to go
Oystermeister
flop
even gives you
here,
a token.
target your dupe.
Sure. You have to do this.
Ooh,
Let's go.
Forgotten
I have
Temple
to
of
do it.
my ass.
I think Dupe Frog is the one.
So, I'll just tell you right now, in pretty much every episode, they played Flip-Flop Frog as it targeted, but 99% of the time it wasn't mattering. This is the only time where it matters, because if you take a look at how this works, because it doesn't target, in this case, you know how MBT said, I'm targeting Flip-Flop Frog. What that basically means is that the opponent is not able to then respond to that effect, trying to protect the card that was targeted because it shouldn't be targeted. So in this case, we see Forgotten Temple of the Deep that says you can target a level 4 lower fish, sea serpent, or aqua monster, and then you banish it. However, if it was actually played correctly, this would send that, but Flip-Flop Frog can still take care of this one because the target never happened. You basically activate the effect, you can respond to the effect, and then Flip-Flop Frog is going to resolve by sending monsters after not targeting before, which means this card should still be bounced back. Or, if they both knew, Danny would just not activate this and Dupe Frog would be sent back to the hand. I mean, technically you can say it wasn't illegal because Flip-Flop Frog is optional actually, it says you can. So if we take a look at the effect right here, it says you can. So you can just say, oh, he just chose to not activate the effect. Sure, that's fair. I mean, you could argue that, but obviously we know that he would have activated it if they knew how to resolve Flip-Flop Frog correctly. In the Duelist Revolution episode around the 40, we're going to see a card get activated here.
All chain dud.
Isn't this in the damage step?
No,
Is it in the damage step?
it's
Yeah.
not.
I mean,
The card doesn't
Inverse Universe
increase-
can't activate
no,
during the damage
you
step.
can't.
What?
So the correct ruling on Inverse Universe is that it actually can activate during the damage step. This is very strange because it doesn't really like gain or decrease stats, but it switches it. But if you look up the official rulings of the card, it actually can be activated during the damage step. Which means if it was activated during the damage step, you then can respond with a widespread dud, for example, during the damage step. They're treating it as if it was during like declaration, so I mean that's technically illegal if that's when you activated this card. Whatever, we're just moving on, but I did want to clarify that. The other thing too is that around during this time, they treated Gen X controller stats being swapped because of Inverse Universe, but that's actually not what it does. It says it switches the attack and defense of all face-up effect monsters. Gen X controller is not an effect monster, so it's the only face-up monster that was not affected by Inverse Universe. And here we end up seeing that Danny ended up taking 2,000 damage because it's being treated as 800 plus 1,200, but it's actually 800 plus 1,400, which is 2,200 damage, not 2,000. Around the 45-22 mark, I'm going to go ahead and play this clip. Something about that target versus it.
Would it still be that target?
Yes, because it
Thank
targets any monster. It targets any card on the field, including face downs.
Well, the important thing I'm wondering about is that target. It's still the same target?
Still the same target, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, this information is correct, but I'm using this as a reference for something that happens in a later episode. But it's important to know that target and there's a lot of confusion among Yu-Gi tubers and this online community about this, but I'll explain more into detail a little bit later. But this is correct right here. And right here, we actually see that Krebons ends up attacking this monster. I know what you're thinking. What's illegal about that? Well, there's actually an Oshalion, and I'm trying to bring up a part where there's actually, there we go. I saw an Oshalion, so I can show you. While you control its face-up attack position card, your opponent cannot select a monster other than Oshalion as an attack target, which means the attack there to the Drill Warrior is actually illegal. Since that cannot be done, you have to attack into the Oshalion. In the end, Fish Step Charge ended up getting activated in response to the attack. So, I mean, would that have happened if Oshalion was targeted? I mean, maybe, right? In the Star Strike Blast episode, in the very beginning, around the 17 mark or so, it's important to know that Gale ended up cutting this card's attack in half, down to 250, well, both of its stats. But if we move forward, direct attack here, Danny ends up losing 500. It should actually be 250. They did not take into consideration the Gale reduction stat in half. Moving forward, we can see that this definitely did not matter in terms of that 250 damage, so it's fine. Next episode. So in Storm of Ragnarok, around the 27-15 mark, I'm going to go ahead and play this clip.
So I'm going to, on attack declaration of Quick, changing Destiny.
Ooh.
Okay. Okay, so this goes to defense.
Mm-hmm.
Wait a sec. Changing Destiny is kind of cracked against the Karakuris. They can't
All
change
pretty
their battle
good.
position again.
I'll inflict 850 to you
Ouch.
and try to Trick House.
How are you doing 850? Oh, for the, try to
For
trick
changing.
house. What is your target?
It would be Sandman.
Okay, this here is an illegal activation of Karakuri Trick House. The card can only be activated in response to the battle position changing of a face-up Karakuri monster. And in here, that wasn't the thing that ended up happening last. This is the whole like missing timing and or missing response windows in cards can happen. It says when the battle position of a face-up Karakuri monster control is changed. That wasn't the last thing that happened. If we take a look and go back a little bit, we'll see the key text in Changing Destiny. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, target that monster, negate the attack, change its defense position, and it cannot change its battle position while it's face up on the field. Then your opponent chooses one of these effects. In problem-solving card text, then is different than do A and B, or do A and if you do B. But do A then B is different, because that's actually not simultaneously, but instead it's in sequential order, which means you then cannot activate the card because that wasn't the thing that ended up happening. I don't know, but because it happened so early in the duel, it's really hard to say if that actually ended up mattering. But there is one other little thing here around 2906. An attack ends up happening here, right there, between these two monsters. This card says, this card must attack if able when this face-up card is selected as an attack target, not this face-up attack position card. It's any position, which means it was targeted as by an attack, so it should change to attack. It's at 17 to 19, should take 200. Brent did not take the 200. I think it's because they thought it didn't have to change, because there's a lot of confusion among these cards, because there's only some Karakuris that only change when they're in attack mode, and some that only change when they're in either position, so it's really confusing. In the end, MBT ended up losing the duel. The damage calculation, I would say definitely didn't matter, but who knows about that trick house thing? It's really hard to know. In Extreme Victory, I'm going to play the clip around the 12:30 mark here.
Because Mitsuho isn't face up, your guy won't die. Is that right?
Because it says that target. It becomes a
Yeah,
different card
okay.
instead.
So this is another one of these dot target situations. If we end up going back, here we can see the effect of Mizuho. Mizuho says once per turn you can contribute another face-up 6-hour monster, then target one card on the field, destroy that target. So the effect gets activated, tributing this, and then ends up targeting Pandaborg, and then they get sent face down, and then they end up believing that it doesn't get destroyed. That's not the case. Like I was saying before, there's a lot of YouTubers and just online misinformation about this. I'm not sure how this started, but it happened a lot in Simo's series as well, where you believe when you see something that says that target, that it's no longer that target. It's not different than it. The important thing to understand regarding properties is what type of card the card is targeting and destroying, or whatever it's going to do to it. So for example here, it says you contribute other face of 6-hour monster, then target one card on the field. That's all you need to know. It doesn't matter if it says destroy it or that target. If it's one card on the field and that property of the card is still one card on the field, then it gets destroyed in this case. So this is different from things like brain control. If brain control says targeting a face up monster, if you then respond to it with Book of Moon to put it face down, you then can't resolve brain control. It fizzles because that card is no longer face up. But if you're using a card like Legendary 6 Samurai Mizuho or Dark Arm Dragon or Raigeki Break or Caius the Shadow Monarch, stuff like that, that say a card, even if you Book of Moon or Book of Eclipse or do whatever and you put it face down, that target is still a card because those cards are only referring to a card. I hope that clarifies, but what I'm saying is Pandaborg here should have been destroyed by the effect. Anyway, as far as it mattering, I mean, this Pandaborg ended up being on the field when it shouldn't have been there. By this point, it's a little bit hard to say what would have actually, worked in here. By this point, this card ends up getting, I think, attributed to destroy the Pandaborg, which means by this point, Leia could have possibly done that to destroy this card instead, but that's if everything else would have played out the same. It's really hard to know. Around this mark or so, we see TG Warwolf ends up attacking a Snowman Eater, and the difference is 700 damage. He ends up getting destroyed because of this card got flipped up, but doesn't take the 700, and this is actually very important, because if we move forward, at this point, MBT is currently at 300. This is still the same duel with that Pandaborg thing that also gave MBT a little bit more advantage because of that illegal action. That plus the 700 damage that he never took from the attack kept him in this game. At this point on, Master Gig is actually equipped with this thing, which is at 100, and you take damage here, it goes down to 200. But again, the damage here is going to be basically different. I will say that if you're curious about who ended up winning the duel, you're going to be shocked. But it actually ended up being MBT. This is one of the cases, just like the last turn thing, where I'm going to say the illegal actions definitely mattered. That 700 damage really had a big impact, plus the Pandaborg thing as well. More so the damage calculation, actually, because all of this duel, the majority of the duel should never have taken place because MBT would have lost like 10 turns ago. Now, could they have done different actions depending on the light point? Things that they had, especially MBT? Possibly, but we don't know that. But in simplistic terms, this 100% mattered. And lastly, we are in the 5D's progression live. The very first thing is in one of the first duels. Sorry if the quality for this one's a little worse. For some reason, I wasn't able to get this thing in 720p, but it was at 480p. I'm not really sure why. Probably because it's a humongous video, at over 2 hours long. But anyway, around this part or so. Oh, sorry, I was in the wrong place. It's actually around the 15 mark or so, a little bit earlier actually. The thing to know here is that this card over here is actually ended up boosting all psychics on the field, not just this one, not just the one on that side of the field, but they all forgot about it, but it was actually boosting up Magical Android. In the end, it didn't matter because there were psychic commanders as well that could have done stuff to get over it as well, so it wasn't mattering, but yeah, Gavin would have still wanted to do it regardless. I just wanted to show that they didn't take this into consideration of attack boosting. Around the 123.52 mark, we do see that Mind Mastered ends up using the effect to bring out a monster, but it summons an attack mode. I actually thought this was not going to be checked at all, but MBT actually did see that, and he said, well, I can just win the game right here to attack that monster, right? And yeah, so they did resolve it correctly, even though in here we never really saw it played out correctly. Just wanted to clarify that. But the very last thing with Esper Girl, it actually banishes the card face down. Gavin ended up banishing it face up. It doesn't matter. I just wanted to, you know, show all these things because that's the point of the video. But it's fine, whatever. The duel would have actually ended anyway regardless. So that's actually it for all the illegal actions over a span of over 40 episodes. So hopefully you all enjoyed this. It was a very long one, and I will definitely be doing this as this series actually begins the Xyz era in Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. So yeah, looking forward to that. So before I end this video, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and turn on those notifications if you enjoyed the video. I will see you all later. Bye-bye everyone, have a great day.